And yes, all of you are tired, bit overloaded with lots of things, which is natural. Absolutely. So what we'll do today is see some graphs. So what was put up was to see how India's exports have changed. What are the major sectors? What they have behaved? How they have changed over the years? What are the key players here? How this has changed if you compare different sets of countries. When I was doing this, it gave me a lot of ideas. Actually. I think you'll have some ideas as well because there's some interesting patterns. And if you will see the graphs and you'll see there's some interesting patterns that have changed over the years when you plot actually exports. And then we will do a small case study on a successful uh, Indian industry adjustments. I didn't know that was successful. The paper I showed you yesterday, if you remember, on leather and textile industry with environmental regulation that came out from Germany. So I was looking up in that, and there was a lot of anecdotal evidences, and in that was hailed as one of the successful adjustments that Indian leather and textile industry did because of that regulation. Because that regulation that came out and not only targeted towards India, but when Germany bought out the regulation, it was targeted towards all the countries that were exporting to Germany. But India kind of took it really serious in terms of because these are the two major players on which the regulation was targeted, and the adjustment process that took was really hailed as very nicely to adjust to the process of the regulation to increase the leather and textile export. The leather and textile export actually didn't drop even after the regulation, which didn't happen for other cases. And if you look up that Azodite case, there are case studies in the I found out yesterday in the UNIDO, in the UN, hailing that how the successful adaptation happened for the industry and not for industries for other countries. So I'll give a brief snapshot of how what are the adjustment methods? What did they do when when you have a regulation of that sort? It's just when you're thinking about regulation, regulation comes banning an input. But it's not that easy. When you are banning an pre-input, what you manufacture, how do you change stuff in your production process to find out new stuff? It's not as easy as it say, or as easy as it running a regression. Right? It's much more difficult in that respect because a lot of things needs to be changed. So we'll have a snapshot of this. Let me start with overall exports. What happened to overall? So I stopped before COVID. This is US million dollars. I have stopped before COVID because COVID gives you different sorts of stuff. There was a big dip here as well in 2008 and 9, not much, but you can see this is about how much? 200, 2000. This was about 2000. Sorry, 20,000 million INR. Sorry, US dollars. 25,000 US dollars, and it increased up to 3 lakh million US dollars, so about 3 trillion US dollars export. So that's significant change, especially during this time. If you look up, this time is not much. After this time, from here till 2014, it's like a phenomenal change. That's what we are discussing. And this time, India really had a huge growth rate, and a lot of growth rate came from this export. After 2014, you can see it's almost that till 2019. This comes from, if you are working on trade, this data set comes very handy. It comes from WITS World Bank. So you can get industry level, product level data set by country. So it's a very handy data set and it's free. So you can open an account and you have to write, I guess, a short note why you want to open an account, and you can download data for free. Country exports, imports, industry-wise exports, imports, product-wise exports, imports, however you want to like it. So it's a very, very handy data set. So this is total manufacturing exports. You can see there's a huge growth rate. Now let's deep dive. What I've done is I've deep dived into classifying not very minutely, but at that 2 digit level. and see, because 2-digit you can identify what is happening at the 2-digit level. WI, so let me write this down. Sorry. This is maintained by what? And this is basically World Trade Integrated Solutions. It's free. Go, and if you want to check anything, product level, industry level, even at the 4-digit level. I've done it at the 4-digit level too much. I have to plot like hundreds, 116 graphs. It's too much. For us, we have done, but for a paper, you need to do at the 4-digit level, right? If you look at food products, you can see this is 94 to 2000. We have really gone down. This is about 1.10%, so this is about 12%. From 12%, it has come down to about 8%. So it has declined significantly over the years. So it's picked up a bit. It has declined more in 2009. Big drop in food products because this is consumer non-durable products. During the financial crisis, consumer non-durable products had the highest drop because you cannot export them. Exports were stalled in the financial crisis. So India saw a little bit of growth after that, but there was a significant decline. The other one, tobacco products, is I don't know. This is much of like a cycle. It's going up, going down, going up. There's not much of pattern here that we can identify, or interesting pattern. It goes up, it goes down, a little bit of going up, and then again going down. So it started with about 0.1%, and it's now about 0.13%. So it's not much change. This is textiles. This is important. This is where this comes really important. So this is the share. What I mean is I'm plotting this on share of the exports of this sector's exports in total India's exports.
If we considering with the world's export, then we can see how India position.
We will be doing it. But not this one. No, we will not do this. Yes, that's the point. That is exact. So, but I'll show something else which will give you some idea. So you can see India had in this total exports, textiles was about 16%, 17%. It dropped to about 6%. This is a huge drop. This is really interesting. This is a huge drop. 1/3, which India is to produce as a comparative advantage, it has dropped 1/3 over the years. Something must have happened somewhere. If you see the total exports, it has increased. It's not the total exports has not, but the share of your exports in your export basket, which gives the idea that how important the sector is in your total exports. It has gone down like 1/3. And if we see this, which had a comparative advantage, if we see apparel, exactly the same. Huge drop, 15% to 5%. If we see this leather, exactly the same. Can you imagine? This is what they this gives you research questions. So when I was plotting this, I was thinking this led me think I will have definitely one paper for sure out of this. Any questions?
Doing this scientific advantage was able to they were able to manufacture and export a lot of
Who?
Bangladesh.
So that's the point. Like why it is happening like this? There are two kinds of questions. Is it that foreign competition, India cannot survive foreign competition? Could be one question. Is it domestic resources not going towards that industry? Is it becoming more capital intensive, it is becoming more labor. Why this is large change over the years? There are could be many questions. One question obviously is interesting is foreign competition. Absolutely. Is it foreign competition driving this drop, or India is changing? Driving this drop means is India changing its important sectors? Are we diversifying in the sense that some of the sectors India had comparative advantage before? Because, for example, let's take this hypothesis. Because of foreign competition, we are not diverting our resources or importance from one sector to another. Are we not giving importance because of foreign competition or any other question? I don't know. But this is to be like, but still, leather, it still is the largest, fourth largest supplier of products. If I go by the world exports, total exports, it's still the fourth largest product, leather exporters in the world. But in its export basket, the importance of these labor-intensive sectors have gone down significantly. So this is a significant change in terms of, if you think about country's export basket, this is a significant change in towards going from one kind of sectors, having comparative advantage in one set of sectors and moving. Are we moving towards other set of sectors, or is India moving towards other set of export sectors? Because here it could be the competition is very high. I don't know. This gives me a lot of food for thought. Actually, it should give you a lot of food for thought, because this is mind-boggling drop and continuous drop, especially in apparel. Yes, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
So you mentioned that the share of exports in the world trade is falling.
Share of exports? No, please. Share of exports in India's exports.
Manufacturing sector in the world is falling for India. So let's suppose it is falling due to we are losing competitive advantage due to the labor sector. Now, can you give me some kind of intuition how it could happen if we are specifically talking about the labor sector?
If we talk about leather sector, maybe production process has become more capital intensive. That's why labor, you don't find good labor in the leather sector. Could be that labor is not going to the labor sector, but that's not the case, right? If you look at the volume of exports, that has increased significantly. So it's just that it's nothing to do much with the labor. Could be. Or it could be because of the foreign, there are many things happening simultaneously. One, there could be simultaneously that making of shirts and shoes has become more capital intensive. And we have not moved towards, India has not moved towards capital intensive production. Could be, I don't know, I'm just saying, could be towards capital intensive production, has not moved towards capital intensive production. That's why they are losing out in the foreign market. That's why their strategy towards that sector has changed. That I'm growing other sectors more, I'm giving importance other sectors more, not this sector. Because even if I'm investing in the sector, I'm going to lose out in the world. It could happen. Because world market, because this is share in total exports, this could be due to the foreign competition, especially in the US and the EU. So this should give you food for thought, these labor intensive sectors, why there's a huge drop across these textiles. And you can see this is huge. This is where China hits WTO. 2001. And you can see the drop from 2001 to 2008. It settled down because of the prices, but you can see the drop from here to here. This is when China hits the world market. So it could be coincidental, it could be a causal relationship. You don't know. From 7 years, from this one, the ratio was about, this was not much change here. 0.616%, 0.17 to 0.16, like 17% to 16%. This comes to about 7%. So half. In 7 years, the share of your exports in a certain sector has gone just half. So there must be something happening in these 7 years. And then you can see it's kind of stable. There's not much. If you take this number and take this number, this is not statistically different. But the main drop happens here when China hits the market. So is India not couldn't compete with China in the world export market because in the textiles, and it's very much similar if you look up apparel, if you look up textiles. Leather. You can see the king is actually in 2001. It is going up, China hits the market, from here, huge drop. It's like exactly the way you want to be. Is that China hits the, if you plot this with China stock and what India's exports is kind of graph you actually like to plot to motivate your research question. The king is exactly where you want. Nothing before, nothing after. The inflection point is right there for your research question. Nothing happens in wood and wood products. It is very much, again, very cyclical. It doesn't give me much. It goes down here, it goes up again, it goes down, it goes up. So it doesn't give you any food for thought. Nothing much, not much change here happening. It was high enough in the mid-90s, about 0.18%, and it has now 0.15%. Paper products, yes, there is a significant increase in the manufacture of paper and paper products, but still it has decreased, and it's increased. Overall, there is a significant increase in terms of the paper products. It was about 0.3%, it's now about 0.6%, so it has doubled in terms of, this is still not interesting. This is media, it's not much interesting as well. How much of exports, I don't know. There's not much of exports in record media and stuff. I wanted to plot. This is interesting. You can see there is this going down. And 1999, there is a huge inflection point up to here. It has increased overall. It has dropped down after 2014. I don't know this is because of any other reason or not. But there's a big inflection point here. But 1999, do you know what happened in 1999? The privatization of the government major SOEs started happening. And ONGC, Indian Oil, all this started happening. Privatization of the management person started happening exactly in 1999. So you can actually have another research question that privatization or FDI, when the first India government came in, they allowed FDI in 1999. When Vajpayee government came in, they allowed FDI in this sector. And the big SOEs in India was in this sector. The privatization, you can see, there is a research question, it would lead to a huge growth in exports.
Why would it be a fall there?
This one, I guess, this is 2008. 2014? 2014, I can't say.
Remember the same structure like our total export now.
In
graph one.
Okay. It's the same, right? 2014.
Yes.
I really don't know what happened in the 2014 here. Is there a domestic policy change or something, or they want to focus more on domestic policy? I really don't know. I really need to look this up. I don't know why the scheme is in 2014, but this is privatization of the SOEs. But you can look this till this, and I have a beautiful research question.
It can be due to political instability.
Could be. But this is the political instability, right? This is where the NDA comes in with the majority.
Outside India.
Huh?
Outside India political.
2014, what happens outside India? Oil from Iran started coming in, or they had sanctions.
We started dropping our imports from Iran.
Crude oil.
Yes.
Okay. From 2004.
Around that time.
Could be. I really don't know. I can't say for 2014 for sure. I really don't know what happened, because this is a big drop. This you have to look up. I really didn't look what happened. But this is privatization of SOEs. Pharmaceuticals, year-on-year growth, more or less. You don't see much. It's huge, about 8%. From 8%, we are now pretty of the world India's export basket is about 18%. So there is about 250% growth that happened. This is pretty much standard. You have seen I guess you have seen news, everything. The pharmaceutical sectors and chemical sectors have really grown over time. This was, and the growth picked up much in 2011. This was pretty standard year. Nothing much happened, but again, 2011, the growth picked up significantly.
And do you know the reason why after 2011?
2011, it could be there was some tax, no R&D tax or something that was being given.
Yes.
In 2011, the DISR allowed for some R&D tax subsidy to certain sectors, and pharmaceuticals was one of them. So this could be a result of this R&D tax. Again, another item. Look up R&D tax subsidies can increase exports or not. See, when you plot simple graphs, it gives you much finer nuances. Rubber and plastics, I don't know much. And this is going nowhere. It's going up, going down, going up, going down. And this doesn't give much. It's not very important as well, I guess. If we started, India started at 2.6%, now it has dropped to 2.2%. So not much change, but there's a huge drop during the liberalization period in terms of exports. Non-metallic mineral products, it's pretty much the same. There is a big up, there's a big down, and then it's going up. Again, there's a business cycle associated with some. So this is not saying too much. And even if you compare this to this to that, there's not much change. Much the same. Basic metals, yes. There is a huge, this is I really don't know about the sector, what happens with the basic metals here. This is about 4%, and it's went up to 6%, although at the end, but this from 4 to 0.1, 200, this is, should look up what happens in the basic metal sector. Mining, what happens with mining here in 2001? Do you remember anything? I don't really. 2001, what happens in the mining sector? Is there the privatization that happens? Because this is manufacture of basic metals. This is the mining sector. So this happens, they take the materials, inputs from mining sector and produces the metals. This is the final product industry. But something is happening somewhere because they're getting the inputs somewhere or something. Because 2001, it cannot be this thing. And it's continuously going up.
Import of raw materials has increased because of China or something.
Could be. Absolutely, it could be. Because China is the market, you have import of raw intermediate inputs, and boom, your exports goes up. That could be a nice story, actually. That in one sector, you have an input competition drives export growth. So this is also a nice story. If that is the case, I really don't know basic metal sector. Fabricated metal products doesn't change much. It's about 2.5%. It's 2.7%. So it doesn't change much over time. Manufacturing of machinery equipment. This has changed. So now thing going about. So you can see this has changed from 2%, 2.5% to more than 5%. So these get me thinking, is India moving in these export markets or production from labor-intensive sectors to a big capital-intensive sector? This is a big research question. Really big. If you have to go through the IO tabular claims data set to actually identify whether India is moving away. It would be a fantastic story to tell. You can tell this. That we are moving away from manufacturing machine equipment from labor-intensive sectors to producing more capital-intensive goods. Because they can't, if I can't, so see, this can come from, you can also show this comes from the foreign competition, because when you are hitting the export market, you have, India had more specialization and labor-intensive goods in the 90s. China hits the market, more labor-intensive goods at lower prices. India starts changing its strategy. The competitive advantage starts changing, and moving towards. So you can see the growth is starting in terms of machine equipment 2000 2001 around this time. The start is continuous. This is obviously financial crisis. Don't worry about this. But this has been almost a very huge growth. So this could be a big research question, whether moving from labor-intensive production to capital-intensive production, produced capital-intensive goods. And if you have capital-intensive goods more, then the demand for skilled workers will go up. So then you have more wage inequality.
So how to classify the labor intensive and capital intensive?
I think claims data they have this industry-wise how much capital is, how much capital is used, how much labor is used. So you can classify industries and you can see if you, I don't know how long way claims data goes back, but if you can add some data, 88. So it's really 88. If you can compare over the time by industry sector, you have a paper to show. And then you can, if you build a model around it, then it's fantastic. And this is not much. This is, and it is very, very low, 0.6%. It is down to 0.2%. Office computing machinery, this is not much. Office accounting. So these are like office accounting machinery, computing machinery. So, minor export products. India doesn't produce this much. Electrical machinery. This is another capital intensive one. You can see this is again the growth rate comes from here, about 2003-04, significantly goes up and up and up. So this is about 1.5% and it's about 3%. So it's double. As again, this is a capital intensive product sector. This is also a capital intensive sector. This has also grown much from before. There's a huge growth here. I don't know why during the financial crisis, exports of radio, television and communication went up so much.
Which others exports come down.
But this,
it might be stagnant.
I don't know why this is like huge. 1% to more than 3, that 200, more than 200% growth rate. That people started seeing more television. No jobs, let's see television. What's going on here? This is very particular to this sector. And medical equipments. Again, huge growth in medical equipments. Again, another capital intensive sector. Huge growth in medical equipment from 0.4% to about more than 1%. It's close to 1.2%. So it's also about 300% growth that happened in medical equipment. So all this you can classify really. This is also motor vehicles. This is also capital intensive sector. You can see this is about 2.25% to 5%, double. So you can really classify by sector, capital versus labor, and you can see how things are changing over the years in terms of capital versus labor. This is transport equipment. It's also capital intensive. So there's a huge growth in the transport equipment sector, metals, all these very capital intensive sectors. And the last one is furniture and other manufacturing. This is not very rare. Okay. Now the interesting bit is the other one is India changing its strategies in terms of developed versus developing? Why they are exporting? Have the shares changed over time or not? So I tried to follow a WTO definition. There are many definitions, pretty standard. And I have brought the first, this is the overall exports, developed versus developing. You can see this is where I'm continuously plotting developed on this right hand axis. This is developing. So red is the developed, blue is the developed. In the developed, you can see the overall median exports was about 0.4, more than 0.47. 47% of India's exports used to go to developed countries versus 10% of to developing. Cut back Year 2020, this dropped to 0.47 to about less than 40%. So about 20% drop. This has increased from 10% to 18%. About 80% growth. So you can see there has been quite a few changes, started changing. So then the research question comes in, this gives you research whether, because this is now in the policy roundup and everywhere, we're discussing whether the intra-block trade is going up or not. In a sense that these southern countries or the developing countries are trading more among themselves rather than developing. Because in the 90s, used to be developing. In the few years, you can change, there is a change in the last 10 years here. Something happening here that there is an increase with the intra-block trade rather than inter-block trade.
Then that to the new trend to monopolistic competition.
You can, because this goes against, it could go against the gravity questions. It would go against, because the developed countries, let's say, if we think of from India's perspective, the developed countries are Europe and the US, which is far. They used to trade more. Now, we can go for the gravity equations. There are the countries which are near, maybe I don't know which countries are, South Asia, maybe, East Asia. There are a lot of countries here, developing countries, which they are trading more rather than developed countries. So I'm trading more with countries which are close to me. I'm not trading less with countries which are far away from me. I don't know, or there are political reasons driving all the trade agreements. There are a lot of trade agreements being signed in recent times between developing countries. So are these trade agreements driving trade away from inter-block to intra-block or not? Because there is a substitution that happened. Has been a and whatever is remaining could be the middle income countries or the least developed countries. Because I've just plotted developing and high income, and there is least developed and middle income countries, I guess, which is left. So it's point. So this would be about what? 38%. 38 plus this is 18. 38 plus 18 is about 56. The rest is other countries. You can plot them and actually see. And if I go country by country, this is more or less, sorry, not country by country. If I go sector by sector, you can see this is not much informative in terms of there's lots of goes going up and down in the food product sector. In the developing countries, and in ultimately it doesn't change much. So I'm just worried about more about this sector. Sorry, not this one. This one's labor intensive, standard labor intensive ones, which used to be the comparative advantage. So you can see this growth to the labor intensive products. So you can see this is interesting. From 2001 on 2005, you can see this is huge growth towards the developing countries. India's exports. And there is a drop from the developed countries. What happened in 2005, you know? There's a major agreement that happened. Multi-fiber agreement. Multi-fiber agreement opened up the quotas for China. So China exporting hugely because China had quotas in exporting to the US, and just China was interesting. This China cannot. So there is a paper that China, because of the AGOA agreement between the Africa and the US, China was rerouting their goods through Africa. Suddenly, from 2005, people started seeing that clothing, textile exports from Africa went up to America like huge. What happened? Why come Africa started producing so much of clothes and leather stuff? China rerouted the products through AGOA. So they put people in Africa, they bought Chinese products and exported from China. So suddenly, African export. Recently, what happened was when the sanctions happened because of the Russia-Ukraine war, suddenly European nations put sanctions. Suddenly, exports from Turkey, exports from Kazakhstan, exports from Tajikistan went up to Russia significantly. What happened? Germany rerouted the exports. The people found out Germany rerouted the exports to these countries. So they put an intermediary, they bought the exports there, and they re-exported the goods to them. So this happens quite a lot because there's a huge fall in income otherwise. So textiles is the same.
So maybe China kept the high income
Countries.
be restructured.
Exactly, towards the low-income countries. It could be your change in your strategy could be driven by foreign competition. The competition does a lot of stuff. Wearing apparel is pretty much the same. These industries, it starts dropping from here, almost a huge drop from here. When China again hits the market, this opens up the multi-fiber agreement. Apparel goes down, and India starts exporting more towards developing countries than developed countries.
So we see that developed countries or high income countries have started exporting more again and developing countries have been around 2016.
2000 here. This one, right? Yeah, this one, there's some peaks around 14 and 15. I really don't understand what is happening here. Because there are no world shocks here.
Even in last graph.
In the last of this one, because this is something happening around that time. There are no world level shocks, major shocks that exports should go down. It's pretty much stable time. And there's a small problem in Russia, Ukraine, but that doesn't drive this in 2014. Very small. Crimea. We started with Crimea, but this doesn't drive this one. There's something major happening somewhere because there's a kink around this 2014-15 in a lot of sectors.
After 2014, the trade between South nations went up.
South
report.
Okay.
So then now we are focusing towards South trade rather than North.
That's not South trade. That we can see. That overall we can definitely see. But how did this happen is the same exactly leather products. So labor intensive products you can see it's increasing towards the developing countries more rather than the high income countries. And the change is happening around this time, 2001, 2005, when China is hitting the market. First with WTO, then with the multi-fiber agreement, yes.
Now, sir, where do we count China? High income or developing? Now,
This is WTO definition. I have to look up. This is middle income country. China is not featured. China is middle income. Wood products, not much change. I'm not worried. Paper products, yes, not much. This is not also. This is, you can see, this growth again happens for both developed and developing when the privatization started. There's a huge growth in exports towards both developed and developing. Privatization started. Chemicals, pharmaceuticals, huge growth in developing versus developed. Huge growth because India is a big supplier of generic medicines towards almost all developing countries. If you take the entire continent of Africa, India is the biggest supplier. In South Asia, yes. So there's a huge growth towards developing countries. This is where the sectors open up in terms of patent laws and stuff. This is the manufacture of rubber and plastic products. Not much change. Again, developing to develop. This is non-metallic mineral products. Again, developing, growing up a bit more. Metals, not much change. Fabricated metal products, again, towards more developing than developed. Developed is going down. Not much change in machinery equipments. Again, so capital intensive sectors, this gives you an idea. Let's see, capital intensive, moving towards capital intensive sectors and towards developing countries. So there's a pattern here. So if you can interact this pattern, that moving from labor intensive products, selling it to the developed countries, now moving towards the capital intensive products, selling it to developing countries. So there's a big shift in change. We need to write a macro. I have to get a macroeconomist. We have to write a macro model on this. This is not micro. And see what is the welfare gain or loss of this. Because we need, otherwise, without a structural macro person, is very difficult to write a general equilibrium model on this. Manufacture of office equipment, computing machinery is pretty much similar. Electrical machinery apparatus doesn't give me, yes, but overall, you can see overall the developing countries across sectors, the developing countries, things are increasing much more. This is the growth is coming from developing countries during the crisis. What we see in the television and stuff, developing countries in 2008 started seeing more television. I don't know why. Indian television and radio or communication, where from this growth coming in. Medical instruments, again, developing countries. Over the time, drop in developed countries in growth. Motor vehicles and stuff, both increase actually. Both developed and developed. And this is driven by, I guess it should be more trailers and semi-trailers rather than more. We don't produce huge amount of motor vehicles. We export. But trailers, yes, because there's Leyland and there are Tata trucks and stuff. So this could be driven both developed and developing countries. You have to go down to see actually which I'm giving a food for thought. Which one? It's too much of goes up and down. Other transport equipment between developed and developed goes up and down. You can't say much. What's the pattern? And the last manufacture of this is not furniture and not specified elsewhere. So there is also growth a bit in the developed countries here from here to there. And furniture, maybe furniture is going more towards developed countries now. But we have to see how much. So this is more or less what. Let me quickly. We have 10 minutes time. Yes. Let me quickly do the case study. It gives you a lot of food for thought. So I've tried to do some from my paper. Let me give you the idea of what happened. So just a bit background, that there has been a huge NTBs from the developed to the developing countries. Huge. In 2005, there's a report by UNCTAD that 40% of India's developed countries, 40% of exports from developing countries are subject to non-tariff barriers. There has been another report in 2018 by WTO. This number has not much changed. This huge non-tariff barriers, because the more the tariff barriers started coming in, the more non-tariff barriers started going up. There's a huge set of regulations that comes in. Suddenly, I remember this, the US, for either leather exports or something, they lost the case in the WTO, because when you put these non-tariff barriers, the countries will file a case against you. If this is unjustified in the WTO, they fight in the court of the law WTO, and you will not lost the case, however it is. So I guess it was leather exports, they filed a case that the plant or the tannery before exporting has to be washed with potable water. Do you know what potable water is? Drinking water. Can you imagine this? Like the entire plant gets washed with drinking water. That's what this kind of regulation sometimes comes in. The random stuff would come in. And this significantly hurt your exports because there's a cost to it. The problem with this is the problem with the regulation cost is it directly raised the production cost. It's not only raised the production cost has two kinds of cost, variable and fixed. And tariffs only increases your variable cost. But NTBs increases both could increase both the fixed cost and the variable cost. So there is a big problem with the NTBs if there's a significant NTB that comes in. And one such NTB was in 1994, Germany. So one consumer advocacy group filed a case with the German Supreme Court that this input in the shirts and pants, which we die for, is carcinogenic to the skin. Germany comes up with the regulation that azodized would be banned. Any product treated with azodized cannot enter German soil. Even they banned it domestically as well. And EU significantly took up the law. After 1995, France banned it, Norway banned it, Netherlands banned it, Austria banned it. MOEF came up with a regulation. It was a major regulation. Ministry of Environment and Forests came up with a regulation in 1997 in their art that you cannot even produce azodized in Indian soil. So it was completely banned. So it was a big regulation. Those targeted towards two industries, leather and textile and chemical. You can imagine because it was an output for the chemical industry. So it was targeted with as exporters because what will be the first direct hit? Direct hit is the exporters. Because they're exporting these goods to Germany or to Europe, and that would hit first. I cannot export. And what I use is I use this Indian leather textile from the province to test the effect of this regulation. And I focus on key four effects: exports, adaptation effects, innovation or technology transfer, and survival effects. Whether a lot of firms exited from the market or not. Export market. Domestic market, you cannot check because you really don't. Export market is really easy to check. You're exporting or not. That's it. But domestic market, you really don't know. Azodize, why azodize was so important? Because it was 70% of all the dyes used during that point in time. That's why it was so important. It was a key input of all the dyes being produced. And Germany was the single largest importer of Indian leather and textile. 76% of all consumer good exports from India went to Germany. The Germany used to import 76% of their consumer goods from India. So that it was a major market. When you are losing your market share, you have to adjust. So India adjusted for sure. Two most domestic important sectors, domestically, two of the largest employers is actually still two of the largest employers. We still see the share in the basket goes down, but if you go by terms of employment, it's still one of the largest sectors employs people. And I'm not giving literature. There are lots of literature review. Prowess data set. What happens? You can see this is before and after the regulation. Export earnings went up, actually triple. This is not expected. You see, actually goes down. Export earnings actually went up. And this import of raw materials, new import of raw materials actually went up. There's not change much in transfer of technology. We don't see a little bit of increase, not much. This is simple stylized facts. You can see this is total exports. There's actually no kink here. It started continuously growing. Even when the MOEF ban came in, still no change. Actually, leather and textile exports during that point in time. But you can see there is a huge change in import of raw materials after 1994 when the ban kicked in. Even for the not much with the technology transfer, which is the red one, but this is with the import of raw materials. This significantly went up. That means they are importing new inputs from abroad. And government of India also helped. Actually, they slashed the substitutable input prices by 1/10 right there. So that's why import goes up significantly of raw materials. This is import of raw materials as well. I was just compared. So you can see this is import of raw materials for the leather and textile, and this is the import of raw materials for all other manufacturing sector. It pretty much the difference was small before the ban. Once the ban comes in, it goes wider because they started importing more raw materials to use it rather than any other. It again became the same after when everything adjusted. But you think about this time. This time it was huge gap across all other manufacturing sectors. This is simple DID, very simple DID. On the left hand side, you have the log of X, which is basically measuring exports, input of raw materials, tech transfer, everything else. The data varies by farm, sector, time. You have a simple time dummy interacted with the dummy. If a farm I belongs to sector J, which is leather and textile. And in this data set, we do not have chemical sector. Completely drop chemical sector because there are input-output linkages with the chemical sectors. And so our data would simply give me a relative effect of the ban given what a farm is doing in the leather sector, leather textile sector, given all other sectors. There's a pretty standard DID setup. This is basically normalized of the exports. When I normalize the exports, you can see this is pretty much on the same trend. Once 94 hits, the gap widens. Actually, leather and textile sector started went up than the other sector. There is normalization of exports across leather and textile. So this gives me the idea there are parallel trends before between leather and textile and other manufacturing, and it went different after the ban. So that's why I can compare between the leather and textile and other manufacturing, because it not be a suitable control group, right? Simply, you can see the ban, which is an interaction term, led to about 23% increase in exports. And one of the key elements during that drop was input tariffs. Those input tariffs held India's growth. We saw, and we interacted with input tariff. The input tariff results were input tariff also led to exports growth, but our main results hold significantly. If there is an additional growth, then you have a control for TFP, it still grows significantly. I did last average treatment effect, completely different kind of method to show that whether simple DIB and if I use an average intent to treat method, the results differ, the results doesn't. It's pretty much positive, significant positive effect.
So not all firm controls were taken.
So here with age, and I guess age square and size. Age square and size.
So chemicals were left behind.
Chemicals was left behind. No chemicals was used because there's an input-output linkages. That's what. But you can see because the problem is this is total exports. We don't know country-wise exports. India may have diverted their exports, right? It could be possible. Germany put a regulation on then I'm exporting to Vietnam. So what I next check was from this data set whether we see a secular trend in increase in exports or not. Whether exports to EU and US, which also US would take up the back, whether decreased after this 1994 or kind of remained the same. It's kind of remained the same. There was no trade diversion that happened because of this regulation. Because that's the problem with the prowess. What happened is basically inputs of raw materials went up significantly. In the leather and textile farms started importing new inputs to use substitutable inputs to use in the production function, which were substitutable inputs from the azo-dyes, substitutable inputs from production function in the production function to produce new outputs. So import of raw materials, you can see, went up significantly. There is an effect on technology transfer, but when I divide by farm size, it comes up. In the overall, it doesn't come up. Survival probabilities. So this is exit decision of a farm on a market from the export market. So you can see what are the important factors I wanted to know is basically the raw materials, import of raw materials. The farms which are not importing the raw materials, they exited the market.
So this is for entire package or leather.
This is for leather and textile.
Why industry exports?
You cannot, because the exit decision is at the farm level. You cannot have farm level fixed effects. The entire absolute group will absorb now. So that's why you have to have industry. No, this is all, but there is always, oh no, exactly. But the industry fixed effects is at the 4-digit level actually, because the industry, but it wouldn't matter much. True.
But we cannot use farm fixed rates.
No.
Because then it will vanish.
Then the entire everything will go out. Yeah. So the import of raw materials actually came out the most significant, consistent. That farms which are not importing the raw materials, they went out of the market.
So why this number of observation is now pretty less than compared to the earlier period?
It's mostly a misreporting. I've typed it wrong. I'm pretty much sure I've typed it wrong. It cannot be that low. Yeah. It cannot be that low. I when I was typing there in the night, quartile regressions gives us interesting. So they see exports basically went up for the biggest of the farms more. The big farms involved in import of raw materials. That's why the exports went up. And the middle side, this came out very nicely. The middle farms or close to large farms did technology transfer. That's why exports went up. Nothing happened here. So the below the median farms were impacted, more or less. Biggest farms invested in technology transfer. Technology transfer actually, Germany Yeah, because India was a so important exporter to Germany. Germany sent during that time their reports. The Germany sent people to make them understand how to adopt this new input, so that they can adopt the new substitutable input very fastly into their production function. So these farms came from this foreign technology transfer, and the exports went up, and these farms used new substitutable inputs from imports, and the exports went up. So there's a very nice adjustment mechanism that happened. And yes, again, same kind of stuff. Exit decisions. So the small farms, you can see the small farms exited the market. So there's a sorting effect that happened. That resources went from nothing happened in the big farms. Small farms went out of the market. Big farms captured the market. So the end should be something like this. My apologies. There's sometimes good. So this is all I wanted to show about a successful Indian case study, which in the export market in the 90s, and that too in the early years when the industry was maturing in terms of foreign competition, and that adjustment took place very nicely. Even if we did a paper on the chemical industry as well of this regulation, and the chemical industry also adjusted quite well, because innovation actually happened in the chemical industry. They innovated new product of the substitute product of the azotized, innovated a new product very quickly. The R&D significantly went down in the chemical industry. We are now trying to use this. I have to get the data set. Germany, what happened in Germany? Because they also banned it domestically. And Germany has a huge chemical sector, huge, like one of the biggest chemical firms of the world is BASF, which is one of the headquarters is in Mumbai, and and Germany has this the chemical industry as well, and how they adjusted to this adjustment process makes economic intuitions interesting. It follows what you see in the theory, and they would follow naturally in how it is. Good. Let's take a break and come back to do some. So this tutorial will be, I'll give you data and you have to show me something.